AskReddit Banjo Man 653 asked, what's a really fucked up thing you've witnessed as a kid but didn't realize it was until you were older? Super Crappy Funtime responded. When I was around 11, a younger boy, maybe 6 or 7, on the school bus told me how he shared a bed with his mom. He said sometimes her boyfriend would come over and he would have to cover himself with a blanket while the mom and boyfriend wrestled in bed. I didn't have the heart to tell him. Hocus Mouse responded. Lived in a townhouse. In my bedroom at night I would hear the kids next door scream and cry. My parents called the police once, but the man claimed he was playing with his kids and didn't let them in, and apparently the police couldn't do anything. Found out when I was older that the man had later tried to kill the whole family, kids, baby included, with a pair of scissors. Handsome 121 Duck responded. When I was a kid, all the kids would sleep in the basement on Christmas Eve to give space for Santa to drop off the presents. That night there was a lot of noise coming from outside on the street, but we couldn't see anything because there was snow covering the egress windows. My mom came downstairs and told us to stay there. But soon we heard sirens and saw police lights reflecting in the snow. There was a lot of commotion that we couldn't see. Then my dad came downstairs with the very real Santa Claus. He told us that his sleigh crashed in the snow and that the kind police officers were helping him get unstuck, and while they were working he was visiting the kids in the neighborhood. He pulled out a present for each of us and sat with my family while we opened them and sang a few Christmas songs. When things calmed down outside, he went back to delivering toys. Years later I learned that there was a large gang fight outside of our house and that a few people died right outside. An older man from our church lived down the road, and knowing my parents had undoubtedly scared children at home, put on his Santa suit and came over once the police arrived. Santa was a hero to me as a child, but that man is a hero to me now. Last year that was similar. My mom would sometimes have us play a game called Army, which consisted of me, my mom, and my siblings army crawling around our apartment. Kind of a hide-and-seek style game. She would yell, "Hit the deck," randomly, and we would all drop and find a hiding spot. We would giggle and giggle while my mom army crawled around looking for us. We loved the game so much. I realized a few years ago while retelling the story that we lived in a really terrible neighborhood, and she would yell it out when she heard gunshots outside the building. I'm assuming she was worried about stray bullets. Erisian. Moon. Living in an abusive situation as a whole. As a child, domestic violence was the norm for me. When I was at a friend from elementary school one time and his parents were having a disagreement over something, I asked my friend when they'd start hitting each other, and he just looked at me funny, not getting what I meant. As an adult, looking back on my childhood, it's only then you really understand how fucked up it all was. As a child it's intense and frightening, but you don't yet grasp the full situation yet. Gigaboo00 responded. Had a guy die in my arms when I was 15, circa 2007. I had stolen my mom's car to sneak over to my girlfriend's house in the middle of the night. On my way back home, around 2 a.m., I saw a car crashed on the side of the road. I of course pulled over and called 911. I had grabbed a flashlight from my mother's glove box and was scanning around in this field next to the fence that the car had crashed into because there was no one inside. It scanned over a body in the field. I rushed over while on the phone with 911 and they told me how to check pulse and helped me through CPR. I was previously a lifeguard that summer but was freaked the fuck out, so they were calmly explaining it to me on speakerphone. At some point after a little while he actually began respirating again, but it was very jagged and terrible breathing. He stopped breathing again less than a minute later after what sounded like very liquidy sounds in his breathing. I tried again for CPR to no avail. He never spoke or anything and could have been brain dead for all I know. I assume it was a collapsed lung or something, but yeah, that guy died in my arms. I remember the ambulance when they arrived said something about him being 18 and intoxicated, but I don't even remember tasting alcohol because I was so hyped up on adrenaline. The craziest part was they didn't even ask me for any information. The police just sent me on my way home as a child because it was a small town and I was close to home. I snuck back in and went to sleep and never snuck out again. I never told my parents that story. My wife is the only one who has heard it until now. Titanic Trash responded. I was once at one of those birthday parties in McDonald's, late 90s, as a young child. There was another party going on the opposite side of the restaurant, so it was pretty chaotic with kids running around everywhere and only a small amount of adults to corral them. There was a man wearing a red t-shirt and blue jeans sitting and eating kind of close to the other party, which was odd in itself because most adults that were coming in were getting their food and getting out of the noise of 20+ screaming kids as fast as possible. I only remember him because looking back on it a little while later, I saw him leaving the McDonald's with a kid from the other party. The kid wasn't struggling or anything, but the man was kind of rushing him out. In my kid brain I assumed it was his dad or whatever, but a couple days later my parents found out through mutual friends that there was an attempted kidnapping in the McDonald's we were at. I don't know if this is true, but part of me feels like I witnessed the attempting kidnapping. Thank God they caught the guy and the kid was okay, and because of that incident my parents lectured my brother and I heavily on stranger danger. Aardvark Holiday responded. When I was 9 or 10 my family and I lived on the first floor of an apartment complex in Colorado. That year we have a particularly snowy winter. Every day following snow, 2-3x per week, the groundskeeper for the complex would make his rounds, cheerily using a snowblower to clear each and every path. I'd wave hi whenever I saw him pass by my bedroom window. After one especially heavy snowfall, the groundskeeper was walking along clearing snow when, just outside my room when something got caught and obstructed the snowblower. I saw him struggle with the machine for a moment then walk in front of it. He bent over to look and when he reached his hand and a splattering of blood hit my window with such force that I'll never forget the sound. We called 911, but his hand was gone. Luckily it was just his hand. He left the job shortly after and I never saw him again, but I'll never forget the sound of the blood hitting my window. Nothing Fits responded. My dad and I were at an air show in Toronto in the 90s. We watched this huge plane go up and do a maneuver, and then go into a dive, going nose first into the lake, with a massive splash. My dad was a photographer and had managed to capture the seconds before and after impact, and told me we had to go right away. He booked it to the newspaper with the film roll to get it developed. I said I wanted to watch the rest of the show, because I thought it had just dropped a bomb and flown off. Didn't realize that I had just witnessed 7 people die. Cat and Tosh responded. My neighbor when I was 5 was constantly asking me if I needed to pee and one time I did have to pee so I did it outside in his garden where we were playing. MF asked me to pee on his face cause he said it would be funny, which it was but man was that effed up come to think of it.
Dude, the line's too long, I'll never make it.
Oh, that's it. Bathe the Stiffmeister. Oh.